Today we have Ram Papish with us. He has been doing programs with us for a number of years. Ram describes himself as a professional bird enthusiast who works to combine his education in fine arts with his experience working in the field as a biologist. He has 20+ years of field seasons working on bird and bird research in places like Panama, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, Florida, Texas, and even Alaska. Ram shifted to his main passion, as he describes it, of wildlife art later in life, and now he has authored and illustrated books. He is a assistant. He kind of assists with a number of interpretive panels and doing the artwork on those interpretive panels all over coastline. If you'd like to check out what he does locally, you can go to the viewpoints at Cape Mears, where you'll find his beautiful artwork on display, teaching you about the various seabirds in the area. Thank you, Ram, for doing this yet again this year. I'm not sure how many years we've been doing this now, but it's been a nice run.
Well, thank you so much. If you hear from my end, if you hear a baby crying, small yappy dogs, cat calling, various phrases, interruptions, that's all a parrot, okay? There's a bird in the house here too, not just in the presentation. We have a bird present in the room, and it does all those things. So whatever you hear, I'll just attribute it to the bird. Okay? Now, Chrissy, it looks like it says host, you need to enable screen sharing.
Oh, I see what happened, because when we lost our feed, moments earlier for the call, then I did not end up making you co-host again. So let me find you, and then we'll get that fixed.
So I think I've probably given about a half a dozen of these presentations over the years, and the topic has always been about birds one way or another. But it occurred to me this year, we're doing all these presentations on birds. Why don't we start with the basics, with the birding basics? So that is what we're going to do. We're going to go over just some basics aspects of birding. So let's see, I'll go share here. You got my presentation up. And this is a birding basics for today, but I'm including, birds that are found not only on the bay itself, but around the periphery. A lot of common birds that you'll see on the shore of the bay, but also wandering in people's yards and so forth, because I wanted to include a lot of birds that people are actually going to see. Now, my goal today is to inform but not overwhelm, because that would be easy to do. There's a lot of potential information to go over, but I've decided to set some limits on myself, just cover some aspects of birds, bird identification. And you'll see, quite a few local examples included here, but I tried not to include too many different birds, and some of them I intentionally repeat. So you'll get a second chance to look at some of these identification issues, and that'll help reinforce it. So I'm hoping some of these specifics will stick, as well as just the general points that I'm going to make today. Okay, so here we go. Today's topics. What we have here on the screen, a great blue heron. And let me tell you, just as an aside, Netarts Bay is an incredible place to see great blue herons. I think I've probably seen, 100 of these at once, looking out across the bay, low tide. There's so many great blue herons out there. Okay, but back to today's topics. We're going to go over bird parts, it says. So what that means is we're going to be going over terms used to describe certain pieces of the bird's anatomy. And birders use some unusual terms that are quite important for you to learn, because when we're out doing a field trip, out with other bird watchers, they'll use these terms that, you know, they're not commonplace terms. Some of them are, some of them aren't. We'll go over all of that. Okay, identification, obviously going to be part of it. And, you know, I also wanted to touch on tools of the trade, you know, just what equipment you'll need to go bird watching. It's not that much. It's actually pretty simple, but we'll go over those things and actually go into specifics. And I'm not going to be shy about making specific recommendations for you, because I'm very opinionated about these things. Okay, so defining terms. We have bird watcher versus birder. You've probably heard the term bird watcher before. Birder is kind of a newer term, but there's also a connotation that's different between bird watcher and birder. A bird watcher is more general interest, or maybe not as serious about their activity as a birder is. So an example of this would be a bird watcher notices birds while they're traveling. They're out traveling. Oh, there's a bird, and they may identify it. A birder goes and travels specifically to see birds. Okay, that's the difference. The bird watcher is noticing them while they're traveling. The birder is there just for the birds. And I have to admit, that's my wife and I. We're always traveling specifically to see birds. Another example would be, a member of the general public may see a large white bird in the parking lot along Netarts Bay there and say, there's a seagull. Okay, well, there's no bird actually called a seagull, but that's fine. That's a member of the general public. A bird watcher would say, oh, there's a gull. Okay, that's better. Not a seagull, a gull. But then the birder would say, that's a glaucous winged western hybrid. And it appears to be his second year with traces of DNA from the western gull. Okay, so that's the birder. Okay, we've defined those terms. And a couple other terms are backyard birder and twitcher. Okay, I think that a backyard birder, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's a lot of the folks here today. They feed birds in the yard and they enjoy birds, and you know, they're mostly identifying birds that come in to the yard. Now, a twitcher is the opposite end of that spectrum. They hear about, this is a British term, you hear it occasionally in the United States, but a twitcher hears about a rare bird and they want to go see it, and they just can't keep still. They start twitching. They're twitching. They can't sit still until they go see this rare bird. So that's kind of the extreme end of bird enthusiasts there, the twitchers. Okay. I mentioned we were going over tools of the trade. You know, birders and bird watchers have certain ways of dressing that make them easy to spot as you're traveling around to various birding hotspots. So the number one we have here, the sensible hat and a spotting scope. Those are really telltale signs. The sensible hat has a large brim to keep the sun off, and you don't usually see people with a spotting scope unless they're looking at birds. I'm telling you, this is a different way, spotting scope. Let's see what else we got here. We have the photo vest. You know, they keep various things in there for their birding activities. The cargo pants, that's another telltale sign. And of course, binoculars. Now, if you look at the background of this picture, this is in India, where they don't, you know, the areas that my wife and I were traveling, they don't get a lot of birders. So you can see all these, wherever we went, we would attract a crowd of people who would just stand next to us and stare at us, not saying anything, you understand, but just standing there and staring without looking away at all. They just stare the entire time. And well, I found it rather amusing, so I wanted to include that picture. Thought you'd get a kick out of it. Okay, so we have a similar, so here we are. We were stopped on the side of the road bird watching, and we're actually literally stopping traffic. We see these guys, the one's wearing his motorcycle helmet, and they stand right next to you just a few feet away and don't say anything, just stand there unflinchingly staring at you at very close proximity. We have a few other items here for spotting a birder. We have, these days, most birders carry a camera because they want to take pictures of the birds and the rarities. The Bino bra here is it's the replacement for a binocular strap that provides more support, because having those binoculars around your neck all day, you know, that can wear out your neck and cause some discomfort. So the Bino bra is a good item. Oh, this is another way of spotting a birder. Hey, Don, I can hear the laughter even though people are all on mute here. It's really something. Okay. All right, now we're going to go over some terms describing the anatomy of the bird. Okay, and as I mentioned, some of these are, you know, terms that we're all familiar with because we use the back, for example. We all are familiar with that term. It's pretty intuitive. And so is the breast of the bird. Now, eye ring, you know, that's a little bit more specific, and it refers to a different color of plumage that goes around the eye of the bird. These are quite common. Often there's a dark eye with a pale ring around the eye. And oh, now this is another one that you may be less familiar with. The flank, that's one that's an important one. And flank basically means the side of the bird, but that's a separate feather tract on birds. So I guess I'll use this pointer here. Yeah, that's a specific tract. It's often a different color, and it stands out on many birds. So what else? Oh, okay, these are good ones here. And these are also not so intuitive, but very important. Now, we're familiar with the term rump, but on a bird, it refers very specifically to this area above the tail. Not down these feathers, these are the like tail coverts here, but this spot right here, that's called the rump. And you'd be surprised how many birds have a rump that's a different color. And, you know, a lot of times when you're out, let's face it, when you're out looking at birds, they're flying away from you, but you can always get a good look at that rump, I'm telling you. So that's why rump's an important one. And then the vent is the area underneath the tail, and that's also often a different color. It's called the vent because that's where the bird releases its excrement. So now here we're looking at the wing, and we have the primaries and secondaries. This is the folded wing. The longer feathers are the primaries, and the shorter ones are the secondaries. So if you, to remember that, you can think of the bird primarily uses its primaries to fly with, because those are the large feathers on the end of the wing. But when the bird's wing is folded, it just projects out right here from the secondaries that are folded above it. Okay, let's see. We've got a few more. Throat, that's an easy one, and crown's an easy one. Now here, this one, superciliary. Come on, you never hear anyone using the word superciliary except birders. And that's basically the eyebrow. Wing bars, you're always hearing people talking about wing bars. Basically, that's the primary and secondary wing coverts that often have a pale edge to them. So when the wing's folded, it forms like, it looks like a bar going across the folded wing there. So that's wing bars. You guys getting all this? Good. The nape, that's one that people are familiar with. Now the malar stripe, sometimes you hear it called mustache, but it's that distinctive area coming down diagonally from the base of the bill. The lores, this is another unusual term. It's the area between the eye and the beak. So it's surprisingly important to look at. Okay, so now we'll speak more generally here and talk about, what is instinctual for people to notice when they see a bird. Let's see here, yeah. So to me, these are the two things that are most instinctual: color and size. And a lot of people know that I'm interested in birds and they've been looking at birds for a long time. So they see some bird that they're not familiar with, they come to me, and without fail, I'm telling you, every time, they always give me the size and the color. And usually that's it. And that's why that's instinctual. And they're like, oh, there was a big blue bird that came into my yard. And I'm like, okay, well, what else you got for me? Did you notice its beak? No, but it was big and it was blue. Okay, okay. I understand, big and blue. I need more. How long was its tail? I don't know, but it was big and it was blue. Okay, you get the point. People always notice the size and the color. And that's fine. Those are good things to look at on the bird. Those are important. But my wife says this separates the bird watchers from the birders, what they notice. It's a fair point. So what we're going to look at today are some additional things besides size and color, although we may mention those aspects. So beyond instincts, these things are not, what you would necessarily think of first when you're seeing a bird. Field marks are important: the shape of the bird, the bird's behavior, what habitat it's in, and its voice. So those are the 5 other aspects of a bird that you can use for identification. I mentioned at the beginning of the program, I didn't want to overwhelm you with too much. So as I go forward here, I'm just going to concentrate on the 2 highlighted items: field marks and shape. We'll explore those further. I think they're really useful and important. So that's why we're going to concentrate on those 2 additional aspects of bird watching.
Hey, Ram. I had a question because I thought that hand painted puffin jeans were part of a birder's standard attire, and then so I don't know if any of you have come out on a program with Ram before, but the first time I met Ram, he was wearing these amazing, and I'm jealous of them, hand painted. Painted by him, jeans with puffins down the legs. So I just thought that's what you were when you went birding, if you're an expert. So
that is a good point to make. I don't know that extends to a standard piece of equipment at this point. I am working on that. I'm trying to promote that as a standard item, but I don't think we're there yet.
I'm on board. I'm on board. I'm also happy to hear that we have dueling biologists in your household competing. I'm glad to hear that you have your wife in the background, making sure you're sharing everything correctly.
Yeah, she's coming and going and either nodding or shaking her head. Mostly nodding.
We had dueling botanists a month ago, so that was also really fun.
That's good.
A husband-wife botanist team. So
well,
right.
That only adds to the content.
It does. It makes it exciting. Thanks. That was great. And there was laughter in my house in the background.
Oh, good. All right. So the distinguished gentleman on the screen here is Roger Tory Peterson. And he is largely credited with kind of popularizing birding in the United States. And the way he did that was through the creation of field guides that emphasized and utilized the concept of field marks. Okay, so here we go. This is one of Roger Tory Peterson's illustrations, and the little arrows are pointing to distinctive features on these birds, and those are called field marks. Now, this is a very useful concept. It's in a lot of field guides, and I do like it when they have little arrows pointing to those characteristic features on the birds. So we'll take another look at different types of field marks. On these three examples, we see, looking at the bird's belly and breast here, we see number 1 has spots, number 2 has streaks, and number 3 is plain. So I'd like to point out that just being plain up front, that can be a field mark too, just the absence of any distinctive marks. Okay, that's easy. Yeah, that too can be a field mark. Okay, here's an example, the Bufflehead versus the hooded merganser, also known as, I call them hoodies. But let me tell you, every time I go to Netarts Bay, I'm faced with this identification issue, because both of these species are very common in the bay. This is the Bufflehead. It's probably might be the most common duck on the bay sometimes, but they're not in large flocks. They travel in small groups, onesie, twosie type thing. And what you see as a field mark just jumping out at us here is that large white area on the back of the head. Okay, so that's a good field mark. Yep, there it is. But what? We got the hooded merganser has the exact same field mark. So many times I'm looking out over the water, particularly half the time I go to the fish hatchery, these two species are there and I have to go through this. So the first thing that catches your eye is that big white area. But we need a second field mark to distinguish between the two of these. And the thing that stands out to me are the two bars coming across the breast of the hooded merganser. So there we go. We got two field marks to identify and differentiate between these two species. So, a lot of times you need more than one field mark. Okay, these are common along the edge of the bay here, and here we go. This is what normally I get would be, it was a small bird with a reddish head, and the red on the down on the whole breast and everything was red. Okay, that's good information, but we need to add to that to do the actual identification between the house sparrow, house finch and purple finch. So here we go, and here are the female of each of those species. And the field mark that we're going to look at is the pale, remember this term, superciliary. Okay, that's that unique term used in bird watching, and that's basically the eyebrow. You see that this bird has a pale superciliary and a pale malar stripe. Okay, so those are the kind of weird terms here. Superciliary, malar stripe. We could call it the eyebrow and the mustache. So it's the purple finch that has the pale field mark on the superciliary and malar, and that goes for both the male up here and the female. Now, the house finch has the same coloration and looks very similar overall, but lacks that particular field mark. Okay, so this is a good one. Most of you will see these two species along the edge of the bay. Okay, this is a good concept to go over. We've looked at a few field marks, but I want to introduce the concept of the diagnostic field mark. Okay, and basically what that means is it's the field mark that differentiates a species from other species. Okay, so in effect, it's the most important field mark. Now we can notice other field marks that are useful, but then a lot of times there's a specific diagnostic field mark that is two things. It differentiates from different species, and it's also consistent because birds have various appearances, variations in their appearance, but the diagnostic field mark remains consistent. Better to go into some examples here. We'll go back to this one we just looked at. You see they both have, the white on the head is a field mark on both of these species, but the bars are a diagnostic field mark for the male wooden merganser because it differentiates it from a similar looking species. This is a good example of birds that we have certainly in the town of Netarts, domestic pigeons. Now they have all sorts of different plumages through, variations in breeding through the years. And so you're like, well, how am I supposed to, if they can look like just like anything, have all these different colorations, how am I supposed to tell them from a similar, a different species of dove or pigeon? Well, I'll tell you, it's that white rump. Remember we introduced the term rump earlier? So whatever the plumage is on the domestic pigeon, surprisingly, they always have a white rump, okay? Now this is a band-tailed pigeon. This is a species that migrates down to South America and then comes back to our area in the spring. And it never has that white rump, okay? Otherwise, it could look very similar to a domestic pigeon, but it's not. So there you go. White rump, that's the thing to look for. That's again, the diagnostic field mark. It's always there, and it's used to differentiate it from a similar species. There you go, white rump. Now, no white rump. And here we go. These are all a bunch of different domestic pigeons, but I'll tell you right now, they all have white rumps. Okay, here's another common one for along the edge of the bay. A song sparrow, a very common, and then also in the open areas along the bay is the Savannah sparrow. So this is a good example of you can observe the field mark of a streaked breast, okay? Yep, streaked breast, Mahler stripe, and pale superciliary. They both have these field marks, but what is diagnostic, is that buzzword again, is the yellow on the superciliary of the Savannah sparrow. The song sparrow never has that. The Savannah sparrow always has it, diagnostic. So that's all you really, you got these various different things that these birds have in common. That's the one that separates them. Yeah, there you go. Here again, we have pine siskin, and we're bringing back the house finch. And again, both of these, if you're looking at field marks, just to describe them, they got these very, very similar field marks. These are all streaky all over the head. It's got a streaky breast. So we need to find what's diagnostic, and that's that very sharp beak on the pine siskin and the yellow in the wing, okay? That's your telltale sign. Okay, cautionary tale. I was with a younger birder on the bay, and we had a report that there was a possible Clark's grebe. Okay, this is a rare species. Western grebe is quite common on the bay there, but very occasionally a Clark's grebe will show up. So we were looking for that. And here's the some classic, really pretty easy to identify individuals. The one in the foreground here is the Western grebe. It has dark all the way around the eye, and the beak is, yellow, just basically kind of a little bit greenish yellow, you could say. And on the Clark's grebe behind, you have white around the eye and an orangey yellow beak. Okay. So, but here's the thing, is only one of those characteristics is diagnostic, because the color around the eye varies. You can see on these individuals, it's not that clear cut. Here you have the Western grebe. It has, it's got the dark around the, but the Clark's grebe has some dark around the eye too. So that's what, birders usually look at, but that's actually not the diagnostic feature. Here you can see again that, this is the Clark's grebe, but it has dark around the eye. So in this particular case, you can see here the eye on these two birds and the pigment around it, it's very similar. But the diagnostic field mark, whoops, is that bill color. And you can see down here, the Clark's grebe consistently, no matter what's going on with the eye, the color of that yellow on the beak is always that orangey yellow. Diagnostic. Okay, so, I guess I wanted to mention here that you also need to carry a field guide, as if you think you know what you're doing and you know how to identify these birds, the field guide will help you know what aspect is diagnostic. Okay, so we're moving on to eye stripes and eye rings, very useful. Here's a great example that, these are two very common birds on the bay here, white-crowned sparrow and golden-crowned sparrow. And you can see they have distinctive patterns on the head, the white-crowned sparrow, golden-crowned sparrow, and below I have the young birds, which are very common. Starting about this time of year, you're going to see lots of these, they're called hatch year birds. Hatch year just means they came out of the egg this year. So these are young birds that are starting to appear. They're moving from their juvenile plumage to this hatch year plumage. And you can see they still have that same pattern on the head. It's just a slightly different color from the adult. Okay, wing pattern, very important. You can see this individual here has no wing bars and this has wing bars. That's that term I introduced earlier. You hear this a lot, wing bars. People are always talking about wing bars when they look at the birds. So, and then down below you have some different waterfowl that are found on the bay, and they have different patterns on the wings. Very useful, particularly in flight. So a couple common birds that have some field marks in common. So to say that these both have a black crown as a field mark is accurate, but you can see they have other characteristics as well, where you have to take it a little bit further for the identification. Tail pattern is another field mark to look at. And if you look at number 3 here, there's a, in fact, I can identify what these birds would be just based on these tails. This is a kingbird. It has a stripe across the tail. This would be a towhee, common on the bay. It's got the white on the edges. And then around Netarts Bay, the most commonly seen bird with these white outer tail feathers, dark-eyed junco, okay? And there he is. So a lot of times you see birds on the ground and you see them fly away and you see those streaks of white on the outer tail. Hey, you don't need that much to identify a bird a lot of times. A lot of times you see those white outer tail feathers and that's enough to say, oh, it was a dark-eyed junco. So very useful. Okay, we're going to look at shape next. And you can see this is an illustration here by Roger Torrey Peterson in which he's putting birds in families based just on that shape, on the silhouette of the bird. And one aspect of shape is bill shape. And, you know, just by looking at a bird's bill or beak, you can often place it in the what family it's in. You see warbler, finch, tern, and hawk or bird of prey. Here, helps put the bird in a family. So that's why oftentimes you remember earlier in the presentation, I had someone come up to me with the size and color of the bird. Like, what about its beak? Because that helps me narrow it down, put it in a family to help identify it. Okay, here we're back with these two. And earlier we noted that they have some very similar field marks. The color and actually size, and also the field mark of the dark crown. But then you look at the beaks there. This one has the Goldfinch has a conical shaped beak, good for cracking seeds, where the Wilson's Warbler has a small thin beak that it uses to catch insects. Now, these are some little paintings I did to show how you can identify, put birds in a family based just on that shape or silhouette. This is, you can see this is the shape of a raptor. I admit this person here. It's got that raptor beak and also just the shape of the body, the talons. We can go ahead and say that that's a hawk. Around here, it's usually a red-tailed hawk, but we get a few other species. This one is based on that shape. We can say this is a shorebird. I can tell more specifically that this is a dunlin based on the shape of the bill. So, if I saw some shorebirds out there that were just backlit and silhouetted, just by that shape, I could get it down to a specific species. That's a dunlin. It's got that long beak, or medium length beak, I should say, about a little bit longer than the length of the head, and it's slightly down curved. That's a dunlin. You see, you didn't think we could get down to a specific species based just on this silhouette, but we can a lot of times. Okay, that's you see that it's got that finch conical type beak. Finches and sparrows are related to each other. I can tell that this is a song sparrow. I know what you're thinking. This guy made these drawings. Of course he knows what species it is. That's cheating. Well, that's a good point. Even so, I assure you I could tell anyway. And the way I could tell on this done, it's easy to say that this is a duck, but just by the shape we can see, you see these little curly tail feathers sticking up? Now, you folks, you can use this. You see those little curly tail feathers coming up on this silhouette out on the bay there? That's a mallard. Forget, okay, yeah, the males have the green head and all that. But you see those little curls on there? I'm telling you, you can tell what species it is just based on this silhouette here. Yeah, well, you people have learned so much that you're like, come on, I already know that's a heron. Okay. Yeah. And here we have the silhouette. We got the thin beak, long tail, long tapered wings. That's a tern. And on the bay, usually you have Caspian terns, although there are a couple other species might show up. Now, general body shape, we have the chunky, round body shape of the starling, the elongated shape of a cuckoo. But when we're looking at body shape, I got to tell you to use some caution, because birds can change their body shape quite a bit. So one individual, based on what it's doing, whether it's cold, whether it's hunting, resting, these different aspects of what the bird is up to, it can change its body shape somewhat. So with the body shape, we've got to use some caution, okay? Just for fun, I wanted to tell you about these terms: bird, Birb, and Borb. Okay, so those are different ways of talking about a bird based on what it's doing with its plumage. Okay, here, this cardinal, that's a bird, and when it's all puffed out like this, maybe it's cold, you can use the term Birb, and then when it's really puffed out, that's a Borb, because it's forming like an orb, so we say Borb. Okay. This is mostly just for fun, but it makes the point that a bird can vary its shape quite a bit based on what's going on in its life. Okay, tail shape and length, incredibly useful as we continue to look at shape. Here's an example from the bay. A lot of people want to know how to identify a raven versus a crow, and that shape of that tail is a very useful way of doing that. Here we have, up here we have the raven, and then below we have the crow. And just look at the shape of that tail. The raven shows that wedge-shaped tail, whereas the crow, it's more straight across. See, if you add that wedge shape to it, that's what to look for to differentiate between two birds that are all black, don't have a lot of obvious field marks. In flight in particular, looking at that tail is the best way to differentiate. Okay. Oh, this is another good example. You have both of these in Netarts here. Mourning dove and Eurasian collared dove. You know, one of the easiest things to look for is the shape of that tail. And really all we got to do is see that the mourning dove has a long tapered tail and the Eurasian collared dove has a straight back to that tail. It's just straight across, not tapered. So you can identify between those based on just looking at the tail. You could also look at that collar too, but since we're talking about tails, we'll emphasize that. Okay, wing shape. The quail has very short, stubby wings, and the swallow has very long, tapered wings. We have some raptors here off to the right, and you can tell those apart just by their wing shape if they're flying over. This is a hawk. This is an accipiter. In our area, that would be Cooper's hawk, sharp-shinned hawk, or maybe goshawk. You probably get those occasionally on the bay. And then this lower one here is falcon. It's got these long tapered wings as opposed to the sharp-shinned hawk that has these short stubby wings. So even within a family, we can narrow it down based on that wing shape. Okay. A proper birder needs some proper equipment, but let me tell you, you don't need much proper equipment. You don't need many things to assist you in your bird watching activities. Really, at the minimum, you know, sure, we went over, you know, the floppy hat and all that, but, you know, it's not a requirement. The two things that you need are binoculars, there you go, and a field guide. And that's it. I mean, how many hobbies do you only need 2 items for? You know, you're not getting your golf clubs and all that, you know, a lot of hobbies, they have a lot of paraphernalia that you got to purchase. Here, you just need your binocular and your field guides and one field guide. Okay. So I'm just going to go over a few aspects of binoculars since they're important. You know, there's the 2 common powers on binoculars are 8 and 10. And when you're shopping for binoculars, they'll have 2 numbers. This first number that you see before the X is the power of the binocular. And then that second number, in this case, the 42, that's the size in millimeters of the objective lens, this lens on the bottom. So this would be 42 across. And that 8x42 is the most common size, and I would recommend that. Some people like a little bit more power, so they get the 10. That's more useful. Actually, on the bay itself, the 10 power is more useful if you're looking long distances. The 8 is good. You know, you can still use it on the bay, but it's even better for in the trees in closer proximity along the edge. Okay, so you might consider getting a 10. But the 8x32 is a good size if, you know, the bulkiness, the size and weight of the binocular. A lot of people don't like carrying big binoculars around, and they go with the 8x32. Okay, so pricing, it varies greatly. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend the $28 Bi-Mart special. A lot of times those are, you know, you look through those and it's a very blurry image and you feel like you're doing better with no binoculars at all. And then, of course, the $2,800 is out of a lot of people's range. So I recommend birdwatching.com/optics to do research on which binoculars you want. I've looked into this for this program and done a lot of comparisons of affordable 8x42 binoculars. And I came up with a specific winner, both in terms of the quality of the binoculars and the value. You know, looking for a reasonable price that is within reach for a lot of people. And The winner is the Vortex Diamondback. Okay, a lot of people have the old Vortex, and the new version is even better, and the price is not bad, I'm telling you. It's worth the $220. You get a lot of binocular and a lot of quality for that price, and that's really all you need. Now, the other thing we wanted, the field guide is the other thing we want to look at. Okay, I looked up on Amazon.com, the #1 selling field guide is the Audubon Society Field Guide to Birds, Western and Eastern editions. Now, I am going to say do not purchase this field guide. Okay, it should not be #1. I'll go into why, don't worry. I'll go into why at probably more length than you need. Okay, so what I recommend is the Sibley Field Guide. I have that one here, and it's an excellent field guide. It really, has wonderful illustrations and they emphasize just that information that you need. It's got a useful layout, and a lot of people like that. This book's pretty big and bulky. So if you want a smaller book that you can fit in your pocket, there's the Sibley Western Birds. It's smaller, has the same illustrations, more compact form. So either of those is fine. A lot of people like the National Geographic Field Guide to the Birds. That's also a smaller book, easier to carry, but you want to get that 7th edition. It's been around a long time, and it does get better with each edition. So those are the two to consider. And here, okay, I'm going to go back and pick on these field guides. The ones I recommended have illustrations in them that do a better job of pointing out some of the things we've talked about today, specifically the field marks and so forth. But these Audubon ones are based on, you can sense my disgust, classifying birds based on just their color. And again, it shouldn't be #1. We're crossing this out. Okay, so here we are looking at the field guide, and these birds are all classified under yellow. So I guess this is where you look if you see a yellow bird. But we got the varied thrush and all of what that looks more like orange to me. So I mean, what I'm looking in the yellow section, this is leading me astray. And here we go. All right, these birds are in the green section. Now, I'm looking at those, and I don't know if I'd call any of those green. So, again, I feel like I'm just fishing in the dark with this field guide. Here we have the black-throated gray warbler, and I'm looking at that. What color is that? That's like, okay, gray. Yeah, sure, it's got gray and black and white. So I might look in gray. I probably would look in gray. Or black or white, but no, this is in the yellow section. So you're getting the picture here. I don't want to belabor the point, but because that bird has a little dot of yellow, that bird is in the yellow section. So anyway, I just, I'm emphasizing this point because this is the most popular field guide, and I'm trying to get people to not buy it. What? Yeah, I'm incredulous. Okay, now also, what's very popular these days, if you don't even want to carry a field guide, and a lot of times I don't, particularly around where I'm familiar with the birds, is bird apps are becoming very popular. And on my phone, I have iBird Pro. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. But anyway, there are various other ones out there, and honestly, I'm not all that familiar with them. This is the Sibley app. These are the two that I have on my phone, is the Sibley app and the iBird Pro. And I like both of these, and you know what? This works really well. So if you want to, earlier I said you need a field guide and binoculars, but maybe you don't even need that. Maybe you just need an app on your phone and binoculars. That's even easier. And they work quite well. Yeah, you know, the illustrations and so forth in the printed field guides, I'd say, are generally better, but in the Sibley phone app, it's the same illustration, so that's not always the case. Okay, here I am with my wife in Thailand, and what I'm going to include here is an example of using these techniques that I've talked about today to identify a bird that I have no idea about. You know, I'm familiar with the local birds, but we travel a lot internationally, and I'm, you know, seeing birds that I know nothing about, and so I have to use these same techniques that I've emphasized today. So here, this is, I don't know what this is, but I make notes here. So I'm noting the short, thick, hooked beak. So that's the shape of the beak I'm noting. We talked about shape earlier, and then the black mask. So we're using bill shape and the black mask field mark. And here I'm getting a look at it. I got those two aspects. What else can we note about this strange bird? Well, it's got a plain breast there. It's got a, you know, kind of a medium length tail. So let's see what I got in my notes here. Okay, chunky body, and the tail is moderate to short. Okay. So that's an example of just having a plain breast and belly. That's a field mark in itself. And I made note of that. Okay, so what else can we figure out here? I don't know. Got that black mask. What else did I? Oh, okay, so it does have the white outer tail feathers. We did take note of that with the junco earlier. Remember, we were looking at the tail pattern. Okay, and then no stripes or spots or other marks. Okay, so we've taken note of the shape, various field marks, and who is that? Oh, yeah, it does have a mask. Who is that masked bird? To me, it looked like a shrike. So here I'm looking at the shrikes in the field guide. I'm familiar with, you know, a lot of those have black masks, but none of this is working. For one thing, they all have longer tails. Okay, remember we looked at that tail? And okay, so here, okay, now this one down at the bottom of the page, we have the plain breast. Everything seems to be matching. It's got the short tail there. Okay, my wife handed me this note. It says it's been 45 minutes. I'm wrapping up here. This is,
I just didn't want you to take your whole Saturday.
No, the timing is perfect. I'm telling you. Now we're just doing our final identification exercise here. I'm in Thailand identifying what I think is going to be a common wood shrike based on all those fill marks, shapes, the shape of the beak, the length of the tail. There it is. That matches everything. Yep, let's go through it. Short hooked bill, you got the black mask, chunky body, moderate short tail, white outer tail feathers, no stripes or other marks. So we got a match here, and it is the common wood shrike. That's a lifer too. That means I've never seen it before in my life. Okay, so we'll finish up here with just some general rules. Just some, you know, we've gone over a lot of specific things you can look at, but also another technique is to eliminate, and eliminate. And you can use various characteristics to eliminate, including time of year, the range map. So basically, you look at this range map and see when a bird is supposed to be in a particular place and if it occurs in your area. And so that just helps you eliminate, narrow things down, which on top of all those other things we talk about is useful. Because it's probably not a rare bird you're looking at. It's probably something that should be there 99% of the time. It's not a rare bird. So as you're looking at your book or your app, you can concentrate on the birds that are expected to be in your area. Also, all birds are individuals. As we talked about earlier, there's variations in these field marks, and also things like the shape of the bird based on what it's up to and the conditions it's in. So not all birds are going to look exactly like the illustration in your field guide. They do vary. Okay? And the parting shots, just for review, Okay, who can tell me what this is? That's right. This is a purple finch. And what we looked at was the pale superciliary and malar stripe. And then that is the house finch, purple finch, house finch. I'm just reviewing these ones that we looked at earlier. And what? Oh, yeah, you're right. This is a pine siskin. And do you remember the diagnostic field marks? Okay, but no, the stripes are not diagnostic because you see a lot of other species have that. Now, it's good to note those. That's good. But what is diagnostic here, the shape of the beak, that really pointy beak, and then the yellow in the wing. That's the pine siskin. Okay, and then here, this is, yeah, okay, I see that. It's got a pale superciliary. We went over that term. And then it's got that pale malar stripe. Yeah, it's got the streaky, but you know, it doesn't have the yellow there that is the diagnostic feature to differentiate from this bird. Yeah, the streaking, the coloration, all that stuff is variable, but that yellow on the superciliary of the savanna sparrow differentiates it from this song sparrow. Okay, so this is pretty, you know, we're getting down into some pretty advanced stuff here. So that is the conclusion of the presentation. We've gone over a lot and done a little review here at the end. And so I hope that that was educational for everyone. Okay, so I'm going to hit the stop sharing here.
Thanks, Ram. That was great. And don't worry, that was a really entertaining. I really like the way you always present your information. It's super awesome. We did have a question earlier that I didn't send your way. So I'm going to scan up and try and find it. So we did have somebody ask, they said they're new to the area and they weren't, and where they had lived before, they were pretty active with the Audubon Society. And they were looking for who's active in this area right now. I've of course shared that Portland Audubon does a lot of things here, as well as Audubon Society of Lincoln City. But I was also curious if you had some suggestions of ways for folks to kind of engage with a group and learn together.
I think that in your area, the Audubon Society in Lincoln City is the best place to start. That's the closest. And I don't, you know, with the current situation, I don't know if they're still doing their field trips. I'm the president of the Yaquina Birders and Naturalists. And during the non-COVID times, we do, each month, we do a bird walk on the second Saturday of the month. And we do a presentation on the second Thursday of the month. And, you know, we have a nice little group here, and those field trips are always well attended. So I would look to the Portland Audubon Society for that first. Okay. And, you know, and just check if they're still active. Our group here is not currently, and, you know, it'll be, at some point we'll start that up again. Okay?
Yeah, that's great. I know that Portland Audubon is active up north as well. Okay. So just a little north from us, about, you know, they are doing monitoring for seabirds up at Cape Falcon. And then I also know that there's the black oyster catcher monitoring that happens, right? So, and they're pretty active there. And I think you're right. Lincoln City group had pretty regular opportunities to engage, but I haven't heard anything in a while. And I can imagine with everything going on, they probably are doing those right now.
It's a difficult time to, make new friendships.
It's true. It's true. I'm scanning up, so be patient. Every time a new one comes in, then I lose one and my phone's ringing in the background, so apologies. There was a question about identification between a pine siskin and a first-year golden crowned sparrow. Do you have any tips for that?
That is the first thing you can look at. There is just the streakiness of the breast on the pine siskin. The golden crowned sparrow doesn't have streakiness on its breast. So That's, you know, that's as far as you need to take it to differentiate between those two. In addition, the pine siskin will have that very sharp beak and the yellow in the wing. So that's all you need. We don't need to go any further on that.
That's great information. I welcome anybody to add some more questions. I have, as I was trying to read you that question, I had about 20 people send a message about how much they enjoyed the presentation. The information was excellent. One person wrote that they left them wanting more. So
now that's surprising.
I don't think you overwhelmed us. It was great. Actually, in this presentation, you answered so many of my questions that I have asked. Yes, somebody just wrote, yes, more. I poked around for a long time on what's the best pair of binoculars I can get for an affordable price, and what's the best bird, so this was really nice to have it all laid out right here for folks that want to get started. It's all here. You kind of really laid it out really nicely. So.
Oh, thanks. Because I've been to things before and people don't want to commit to a specific recommendation. And I'm like, come on, just tell me what to buy. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and include that.
As someone who has a really hard time deciding if it's a good choice to spend money on this, it's really complicated. So I really like it. It's awesome. I'm just going to scan through and see if there's any more questions here. Pine siskin, we got that one. Can you share just some kind of birds that we might be catching right now because it's migration season in Netarts Bay that folks might get excited to see that maybe are here now and not going to be here for too much longer because they're kind of passing through?
Yeah, so right now, shorebirds are moving through the area. So on the bay, you'll get yellow legs, greater and lesser yellow legs, Dunlin. What else, Dawn? Wimbrel, that's a good one, yeah. Wimbrel, that's got the long decurved beak. They're probably near their peak right now as they're moving through for fall migration. Now, some of those will stay through the winter, but a lot of these you just have greater numbers now during the migratory period. It's a little early for ducks to be moving back in, and shortly we'll be getting loons moving back in. You have pelicans moving down south right now, so there should be some of those around. Yeah, I would. But in terms of what's coming and just moving through, I'd say shorebirds would be the thing to look for this week.
Awesome. Yeah, there's also a site I'm going to pull up. It's something that had been, I guess, around for a really long time, but nobody was keeping it up. But one of our volunteers has actually decided, who's a big birder, has actually decided to kind of revitalize it. It's a Tillamook birding group. And so I'll put the link in there, and he's been posting blog posts of some things that he's been seeing, and he actually saw some of the birds that you just named. It has some pictures in. So in the chat, I will put that for you guys, for everyone to see and follow along. I think a lot of people used to utilize it, but it kind of sat idle for a while, but he's really trying to bring it back. And so he's been doing some recent blog posts on there. And then I did have another question come in about, which is a really good question, because I want everybody to know that I think this is a fantastic presentation, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't do something like this before we do field versions in the future, like just kind of do a virtual, here's the basics, and then do our longer field version. It could be a nice complement to each other. But usually we take people out, and so we have the basic information, and then we take people out to actually go and spot birds together in the field. And of course we didn't get to do that. So do you have some suggestions of where they should go in our area, just to kind of get, I mean, I could imagine some of them, but can you suggest some that, good places people can go to get a good view? Netarts, even beyond Netarts is fine too.
So, right, you can start right at the marina there. That's a really good spot. And just, walk around there because you have a good view of the water, and also birds using the the breakwater and just on the piers and pilings. All of that is really easy to get to, and really a good variety of birds there. And then going along the bay, there are various places to pull over that people are familiar with. And you can stop along there. And, you know, there's some signage that gives more information. People are probably familiar with those pull-offs there. So you can use those. And then the Whiskey Creek Fish Hatchery is great because, you know, and I always take groups there because you have those forest birds. A lot of the songbirds that were in this presentation are easy to find at that location. You walk just a short trail out to the bay. And so that has the best of both worlds. It has a little forest birding and a commanding view of the bay. So, yeah. So my wife is pointing out that Sitka Sedge is it State Park or State Natural Area? At any rate, that's a new area that's state lands that have been opened up. And, you know, that's a great place for birding because they have a dike that you can walk along and have a commanding view of both the salt flats and the freshwater on either side of that dike. So that's a little to the south of your area, and I recommend that. Just until you get into the dense woodlands, that's a little bit tougher to find birds, but just go and walk on that dike. It's maybe a mile long. Just go ahead and do that. That's easy. And yeah, because you're going through a variety of habitats there, which gives you good opportunities. And then, of course, to the north, Cape Meares is great. So Cape Meares State Park and Wildlife Refuge there. You have views of the ocean and the forest. Again, you're getting a variety of habitats there. And, you know, you can see breeding hermit warblers at close range. That's one of the best places to see those. And then you have breeding seabirds in the summer. So, yep, that would be it. I'd hit the Sitka Sedge to the south, Cape Meares to the north, the marina and the pull-offs along the bay. Whiskey Creek Fish Hatchery.
Yeah, the fish hatchery is kind of, I don't think people think of it as a place for birding or watching the bay, but it actually has a really fantastic vista of the bay, and you get to see a lot of action.
It really is. It's got the best of everything, right, in that little easy to visit area.
Right, and it's super easy to get there. And there's a big parking lot, which is helpful.
They even have red hot pokers planted that in the season they bring in a lot of birds. So they even have ornamental plants there that bring in good birding.
But don't be fooled by the decoys in the pond. They have some.
Oh yeah, that's, you know, that throws people off. Yeah.
I have seen many people be fooled by them.
You can have some fun with that though.
So I just looked up what birds my volunteer was sharing. He said actually he saw an American white pelican at Bay Ocean, which is pretty rare. Are uncommon, he says.
Yeah, that's great.
And then some of the names that you shared, and then golden plovers, American and Pacific golden plovers out at Bay Ocean.
That's a really good bird. I mean, you know, that's one you can go years without seeing. So they do move along the coast here in very small numbers. So that's a great sighting.
Yeah.
And that pelican is too. I mean, you see a white pelican in your area maybe once every 3 years.
Yeah, I don't usually hear people talking about it. When they do, they're very excited.
Oh, we just lost the sound there for a second, but you're good now.
All right, good. We did have a couple more questions. Mm-hmm. Where can we learn about shorebird behavior for identification?
I would first refer you to the Sibley Field Guide, this one here, because he does a good job of talking about behavior. And you can just go to the shorebird section, and he'll talk about things like the spotted sandpiper, how it bobs its tail. And it's the only shorebird in our area that does that consistently. So you can identify it to species based just on that behavior. But I think just going to that field guide and getting some tips there, specifically about shorebirds. I'm trying to think of a different resource. I'm not familiar with anything else that deals more specifically with shorebirds. There are some specialty books that are about, there's Shorebirds of the Pacific Northwest is a book that I have, but I think that you're actually better just looking in your more general field guide for those observation tips based on behavior.
Great. Then, let's see, this is what happens. I got more comments come in, so then the other ones sink away. So the other question was, what raptors are in the area? This Marcy is who wrote this. She lives in Bay City, and she has seen great gray, saw-whet, barred owls thus far, also red-tailed hawks. So what other raptors might she be?
Okay, so the great gray owl, that's not something that you would expect to see there. That's a bird that lives in Oregon, just high in the Cascades and the Wallowas. I don't know that it's ever been seen on the Oregon coast. So that one's unlikely. And we'll go back to something in the presentation where I said it's most likely not a rare bird. So that, I'm not sure what that was, but in terms of raptors that you'd expect in that area, certainly great horned owl would be the more likely owl, and it's similar to that great gray in both coloration and size. So, she may have been focusing on those aspects I mentioned earlier where, you're going to focus on color and size, but then it also has some other field marks to look at. But certainly red-tailed hawk and red-shouldered hawk could be seen in that area, as well as the northern harrier. That's a bird that likes open country along our coast here. So those would be, and then peregrine falcons use the whole coast. And let's see, certainly bald eagle occur in that area. And white-tailed kite might be possible. I don't see a lot of those. And another owl that uses open country, I don't see a lot of them, but short-eared owl is a species that you see flying along open areas along the coast occasionally, if you're lucky. So I think that's a pretty good summary. We occasionally get merlin or kestrel if we're talking about falcons. And certainly in people's yards, near bird feeders, you get sharp-shinned hawk and Cooper's hawk. Okay, so I think that's a good summary. That's a lot of information there, but those would be the raptors you're mostly looking for.
That's awesome.
In terms of owls, I mentioned the great horned owl, but also barred owl is becoming increasingly common, particularly along the coast here. So that would be another one that people might have in any wooded area or even in their yards.
We have, my kids and I have been camping out in our backyard since, that's,
sure.
Why not? We've pretty much camped out for about a month and a half, almost straight, until the rains and smoke came. But one thing we've had the joy of experiencing is that a great horned owl has come and perched in the maple tree right above our tent. And we can tell it's there. We can hear it land, and we can hear it call, and it's calling to another owl that is further off that is answering it. So it's been a fun thing to listen to the owls kind of talk to each other. We also heard a barn owl while we were out there. It kind of, the barn owl is a screech, right?
Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah. My cats ran for cover, which means that they're smart and ready to survive.
They should. That's good.
We just had one more comment, and then we'll probably just wrap things up. Story's on here too. So again, one time, thank you, Story, for bringing Ron to us every year. I really appreciate all your hard work. Story is also an avid birder, and she said she's seen, oh, there it went again. Everything moved. Okay. This is the downfall of a Zoom chat.
Yeah, someone said that they saw the great gray owl in Southern Oregon, and that's they do occur in down in the Siskiyou Mountains there, so that's a good place to look for them.
Yeah,
also.
That's a good call. I think somebody typed in here that they saw one in the Tillamook Forest. Does that seem like maybe uncommon, but could happen?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be a rarity, but that would be possible. It's not down at sea level.
Yeah. So the chat has been that other places to go see some great birds is also along Tillamook River Road here locally. So, and I would agree with that. Yeah. Some good sightings in that area. And Story shared that she saw marsh wrens along the Tillamook in the spring and the summer. So just kind of a nice thing to look for during different times of year. But.
Sure. Yeah, they're very vocal and active in the spring when they're setting up territories.
Well, Ram, I just want to thank you again. I think that this was a super informative presentation, and I want you to know that I was chuckling along at your presentation. You're always such a very entertaining and enthusiastic presenter, and I always really appreciate the way you give us information. So thanks for doing that. I know that you didn't have an audience coming back at you, but I just want you to know that even though it was muted, I was actually laughing along with you.
Oh, good.
They're my
Thanks.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I'll just laugh at myself. Yeah, that worked out fine.
I love how your wife is in the background keeping you on point. That was awesome.
Yes, she is.
But yeah, no, really, I really appreciate it. And know that Ram took most of these pictures in this presentation. Not only is Ram, just kind of an all-around bird knowledgeable person, he's also an extremely talented photographer and artist. And if you haven't gone and appreciated the interpretive panels up at Cape Mears, I hope that you will. Last year, the year before, Ram shared his process for creating those interpretive panels and the work that he puts into doing it to capture kind of the way the bird's posture, their movements, to kind of translate that in an image. And it was really, really cool to see how you work through that process. And so I encourage everyone to go check out the final piece that's up there because it's beautiful and really well done.
Thank you.
And then hopefully next year we can get together and go birdie. We're seeing. We're hopeful though that next year we can also do something like this and include a field session. Thanks again, Ram. Just really appreciate it. And I see a question in the chat that I will answer before we log off because it's for me. But otherwise, I hope everybody has a great afternoon. It looks like it's maybe going to clear off, so you could grab your binoculars if you have them, or just kind of take a walk and try and spot some birds for yourself today.